Something brushed my calves and the world shrank to the size of a visor. A hard tug snapped through my harness. My umbilical line went slack, then dead weight. The hiss in my ears turned thin. I looked down in the beam and saw the air hose curve away into the dark. A clean, impossible cut glinting like a mouth. My gauge dove. "Topside." "I'm losing air," I said, or meant to, but the comm cracked into static and wet chewing sounds. A shape slid between me and the breach in the hull, slow and waiting, as if the water itself were bracing to swallow. I grabbed for the bailout valve. Everything went very, very quiet. 1 week earlier. They brought us out on a rented barge that smelled like burned coffee and diesel. Weather held flat. The Atlantic turned to slate under a hard lid of sky. We were 5. Me, Mara Keene, my usual partner, Val the sonar tech, Jansen the dive sup, and a company man named Ortega whose jacket never got wet. He kept the paperwork in a Pelican case like it was a religious text. "SS Caliban," Jansen said, tapping the chart with a knuckle. "Sank out here in 44. Officially," he looked at Ortega, "empty." "Empty," Ortega confirmed, careful as a lawyer. "Crew evacuated at sea." No surviving log. Manifest lists, no cargo. Val didn't look up from her monitors. "Then explain why the hold ping's as solid as a bank vault," she said. The side-scan image printed out in strips, black ship on lighter water, a ribcage of girders and a rectangular bloom in the cargo bay as featureless as poured lead. "They hired us because I've been down in bad places and come back with the bolts. Salvage isn't treasure hunts. It's patience and knives. You cut, you lift, you curse at the sea until it lets go. The ocean doesn't keep secrets. It corrodes them open." I believed that until the Caliban. We rigged for 400 feet. Hot water suits, full-face comms, dual redundant bailout. In that depth, there's no room for bravado. You move slow and let the nitrogen talk past you. Mara checked my clips with the same solemnity as always. Tap, tug, nod. "You forget your lucky coin?" she asked. "I don't carry luck," I said. "It sinks." She smiled into her regular. "Try not to." The winch took me over. The water took the rest. It goes from daylight to bruise to night in 100 feet. Then it's just the beam and your breathing, and the feeling that everything you've ever been is folded into a pouch on your back. I followed the shot line until the dark changed texture and became metal. The hull loomed up like a beached whale, scabbed with anemones and glassy with salt. A nameplate lay half-sunk in silt, CALIB. The rest sheared away. "On the wreck," I said, moving to the breach. There was a hole in her starboard side where a torpedo or bad luck had undone her. I slipped through, careful of jagged steel. Inside, the silence had weight. Silt rose and drifted like breath caught in winter air. My light found a corridor of collapsed bulkheads and the once white of enamel now the color of old teeth. "Hold should be forward," Val said over the line. "You look good, Eli." In the beam, dust motes turned to snow. I counted my kicks, followed the map in my head. The first sign that something was wrong wasn't a thing you could point at. It was a hum, subtle, behind the suit noise. Not vibrating the water, I felt it in my jaw. "Say again?" Jansen said. "Getting a tone on your channel." "I hear it too," Mara added. "Like power lines." "There's no power," Ortega snapped automatically. We reached the hatch to the main hold. It should have opened onto emptiness, maybe scattered crates busted and long since picked clean by current. Instead, my beam hit a wall. Not a wall. Rows. Steel containers, sealed, stacked 4 high and lashed into place as if the ship had never moved. Each one had a stenciled insignia blurred by time. USAR, MY, signal. The rest unreadable under mineral bloom and a string of numbers. The paint held the ghost of a symbol, a circle with wings. Older than any agency I'd worked with. I floated there a long second, breath loud. Topside, I said, slow. Manifest was wrong. Silence. Then Ortega. Describe. Containers. Sealed. Government markings. Val's voice went tight. I'm getting dense mass returns inside those boxes. Uniform, no voids. Photograph and exit, Jansen ordered quickly. We'll reevaluate. Copy, I said, and lighted the first crate. Frost traced the seam on the inside of the glass view slit, not from cold but from something like respiration. Condensation that formed, thinned, and formed again in a rhythm just slower than mine. Mara hovered at my shoulder. Do you see that? I did. In the gel behind the slit, something shifted. Not a fish, not machinery. An indentation pressed outward and relaxed as if testing the barrier from the other side. The hum ticked up half a notch and the hair on my arms lifted under rubber and heat. Eli, Jansen said, a little softer now. Get your photos and come home. I raised the camera. The lens caught a glint. On the far edge of the hold, another slit. And behind it, the suggestion of an eye that wasn't an eye at all. Just the idea of watching. I took 3 shots. The flash painted the hold in salt white for the blink of a second. When the darkness fell back, the condensation marks on the inside of the slits were no longer ovals. They were handprints. I backed away, slow, careful of my hose. Outside, the ocean pressed its ear to the hull. Inside, something else breathed. We surfaced to gray morning and gulls that didn't come close to the barge. They circled wide, restless. The air smelled metallic, like the ship below us had bled through the waves. Mara peeled her hood back, hair clinging to her cheeks. Those containers weren't just cargo, she said. You saw them breathe. I saw condensation, I told her, but my voice didn't sound like belief. Ortega wanted video. He wanted confirmation. A single sample, he said, pacing the deck like a man defending a deal, not a dive. 1 crate opened, chain of custody intact. You'll be compensated for risk. Jansen argued, Val swore, and Mara stared out over the water like she was listening to something rise from underneath. In the end, the company line won, as it always does when money smells stronger than fear. By afternoon, we were back in the suits. The sea was calm, flat as a coin. I tried to tell myself that was mercy, but calm seas hide graves just fine. At 400 feet again, the Caliban looked different. My lights caught flakes of paint drifting like dust, as if the wreck had aged decades overnight. I followed the guideline back to the breach, heart knocking the rhythm of my breath. Visual? Jansen's voice cracked in and out through static. On entry, I said. Visibility low. Silts up. Inside the hold, the rows of containers looked undisturbed. Except one. The upper latch on a corner unit hung loose, like it had been twisted from inside. The seam was weeping a thin ribbon of dark liquid, curling upward as if the water around it refused to let it sink. Mara's voice came through faintly. Eli, you seeing that movement? Negative, Might be reflection. But it wasn't. The line of liquid pulsed, like something testing the gap, feeling for release. Topside, advise. Silence. Topside, respond. Only the hum answered, low and droning through the water. It vibrated the fillings in my teeth. I moved closer, camera shaking slightly. The label was clearer here. U.S. Army Signal Corps, Project Mercury. Do not unseal. Biological material. The last two words burned themselves into my mind. Biological material. Not weapon, not experiment, just material. The seam widened another inch. Something pale pressed outward, indistinct, like tissue or fog seen through water. Then a slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap sounded from within, each one sending a shiver through the hull. Mara's breathing picked up on the comms. It's knocking. Back out, I said. Now. She hesitated. What if it's pressure? Gas buildup? The crate answered with a fourth knock, closer, faster, almost eager. Back out! We pulled to the breach, stirring clouds of silt behind us. I reached for the line to guide us home, and froze. There were more taps. Dozens now, all through the hold, like a rainstorm starting from inside the ship. The hum rose in pitch until it blurred into something that wasn't sound anymore, but presence. The comms flickered with ghost voices, chopped and distant. Reevaluation, containment, open channel, then gone. Eli, Mara whispered. They're waking up. We didn't look back until we were at the hull's edge, lights cutting through the breach. For one terrible heartbeat, I saw shapes moving between the rows of containers, gray silhouettes dragging themselves upright in slow, impossible motion. I switched off my light. The darkness, I thought, might not notice me if I didn't make it glow. That night, the barge pitched on a dead sea. No wind, no waves, just slow, unnatural movement, as if the water itself were breathing beneath us. The generators hummed with a faint, irregular pulse, the same rhythm as the knocking we'd heard below. Val sat in the galley surrounded by sonar printouts. Her fingers trembled as she pointed to the feed. It's coming from the wreck. The resonance pattern. It's like heartbeat intervals, roughly 40 beats per minute. Could be current, Jansen said, but his voice lacked conviction. Current doesn't sync with human vitals, Val shot back. It's alive down there. Mara looked at me across the table. What if we woke something that wasn't supposed to wake? Ortega slammed his palm against the metal bulkhead. You people need to stop with the ghost stories. It's pressure leaks and trapped gas. We go back down tomorrow, document, and close this operation. But none of us slept. The walls groaned at intervals, and the air compressor cycled erratically, hissing like breath. Around midnight, Val swore she heard knocking through the hull. We descended again at dawn. The water was cloudy, unnaturally so, like silt suspended by invisible hands. My lights picked up strands drifting upward, glistening faintly. They weren't sediment. They were fibers, organic, pulsing gently, spreading from the wreck like roots. Topside, I'm seeing some kind of growth on the hull, I said. Jansen's voice crackled. Repeat. Fibrous, biological material, extending maybe 50 feet out, looks fresh. Copy, he said after a pause. Proceed with caution. Inside the Caliban, the hold was different. The containers were no longer in perfect rows. Several had fallen open, torn from their mounts. The air hoses and light cables we'd left behind had fused to the metal with a slick, resinous coating. Mara's camera light swept over one of the open crates. Inside was nothing solid, just a faint shimmer, a distortion that bent the beam like heat above asphalt. The gel that had filled the containers was gone. Then her camera caught movement. A human form, or what used to be one, half fused into the wall. Its face was indistinct, features sliding beneath translucent flesh like something trying on expressions. "Jesus, Eli," she whispered. It's breathing through the hull." The figure's chest rose, slow and uneven. When it exhaled, the water clouded white. The hum deepened, vibrating through our bones. "Pull out," I said. "Right now." As we turned, the ship answered. A single metallic thud reverberated through the corridor. Then another, closer, faster. The bulkheads flexed, shedding clouds of rust. The lights flickered. I caught sight of movement in the passage ahead, shadows writhing along the ceiling, gliding toward us. Not swimming, not walking. Flowing. "Something's in here with us," Mara's voice spiked into panic. I reached for her hand, but she was already backing through the silt. A shape brushed my helmet, a touch light as silk but cold enough to numb. My headlamp flashed across a surface like wet glass, transparent but filled with faces pressed against it from within, mouths opening in silent screams. The ship shuddered. The knocking erupted again, hundreds of strikes from every direction. "Abort! Abort! Up the line, now!" We fled through the breach, kicking hard. My gauges screamed warnings. The moment we cleared the hull, Mara froze. "Eli," she whispered, "they're coming out." From the hole we'd escaped, a plume of black water bled upward, twisting like smoke. Within it were fragments, arms, faces, eyes, but none stayed fixed for long. The clouds spread with impossible speed, reaching toward our lights. The ocean wasn't silent anymore. It sighed. We rose as fast as the suits allowed, lungs tight with fear. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed the wreck was the name on the hull, letters reshaping themselves in the current until it no longer read Caliban. It read Calibreath, and something beneath it was still moving. We didn't speak for a long time after surfacing. The sea had gone glass flat again, as if trying to erase what we'd seen. The dive cage rose dripping beside us, cables twitching in the still air. No one wanted to say it, but we all knew. The wreck wasn't finished with us. By nightfall, the barge began to hum. The sound came through the hull like a living thing, low and steady, resonating in the bones. Val killed every system she could, even cut main power to the sonar. Didn't matter. The hum was inside the metal, inside us. Jansen slammed a wrench against the deck. "We're pulling anchor." "We're done." Ortega blocked him. "You'll do no such thing. The company paid for recovery. That means specimens." "Specimens?" Mara barked a laugh that broke halfway through. "That stuff is alive. It's spreading. We're already contaminated." Her words were drowned by a hollow clang from below. The barge listed slightly. Then again, stronger. Something was hitting the hull from beneath. Val's monitors flickered to life on their own. Grainy sonar feeds stuttered across the screen, blobs of movement rising from the wreck. Dozens of them, maybe more. "They're coming up," I whispered. The power cut out. At first light, Ortega insisted on a final confirmation dive. He said the investors needed visual closure. None of us wanted to go, but it wasn't really a request. Mara refused outright. "You send him," she said, pointing to me. "He's the one who knows the wreck." Ortega didn't argue. "1 hour," he said. "You find proof, or you find nothing. Either way, this ends." I suited up in silence. The air smelled wrong, like copper and rot. When I checked my regulator, condensation dripped out that wasn't water. I didn't tell anyone. The descent was slower this time. The water felt thicker, like syrup around my limbs. My light reached maybe 10 feet before dissolving into green murk. "Topside, reading you," Jansen said. "Keep comms open." "Copy," I lied. By the time I hit 400 feet, the Caliban was no longer just a shipwreck. It looked reborn. Those fibrous growths we'd seen were everywhere, webbing between rails, covering the hull like coral native veins. My glove brushed it once. It pulsed under my touch. Inside, the corridors were smaller, constricted by the living material that now pulsed with faint inner light. The containers were gone. In their place, shapes drifted, slow, human, wrong. Skin like thin wax, hair moving independently of current, faces shifting like reflections on an uneven mirror. I turned my helmet cam toward the central bulkhead. Someone, something, had carved words into the metal with bare hands. They never died. They just changed. The hum started again, this time coming from the suit's comms. My own breathing synced to it, unwillingly. "Topside, do you hear that?" Static. Then a voice, familiar but warped. "Eli, come back down." Mara's voice. But she was topside. I turned toward the sound, and the corridor behind me was no longer empty. A silhouette drifted there, her shape, her movements, but her visor was cracked and her mouth was open wide as if she were still screaming underwater. I kicked backward. My fin brushed something soft, and I realized the corridor had closed behind me. The ship wasn't decaying anymore. It was breathing. "Topside, I need extraction," I said. "Now!" No response. Only that hum again, lower, closer, vibrating through the metal around me until it sounded like a voice whispering through my helmet. "You brought us light. Stay and see." Something slid across my back, cold and slick, and before I could turn, my airline jerked tight. I looked down and saw it looped around a metal beam, stretching taut. "Topside, I'm snagged, wait." Then tension, a violent pull. The hose ripped. The hiss of escaping air filled my helmet. For a heartbeat, I didn't move. Training said stay calm, switch to bailout, ascend slow. But instinct screamed louder. Run. The pressure gauge dove, the world constricted to a strobe of light and panic. I reached for the auxiliary valve, hands shaking, vision tunneling. Something moved through the beam of my light, huge and formless, sliding between compartments like ink through water. I kicked for the breach, lungs aching, backup tank hissing to life. The beam caught a glimmer of motion behind me, faces merging and separating inside a translucent shape, hundreds of them whispering through the bubbles. "Don't leave us." Every meter upward felt heavier, thicker, as though the sea itself didn't want me to go. When I looked back one last time, the Caliban's lights, those faint internal glows, were flaring brighter, one by one, until the whole wreck pulsed like a beating heart. Then darkness took it again, and I kept climbing, praying I wouldn't feel another hand brush my suit before I reached the surface. The last 100 feet felt endless. Every kick seemed to pull me deeper, not higher. My lungs burned, throat raw from gasping through the bailout. The sea pressed in on all sides, heavy and alive, whispering in the regulator with a sound that wasn't static but breath. The pressure gauge blinked red. 60 seconds left. Then, light. A faint shimmer above, distorted by the writhing of the water around me. I pushed toward it, ignoring the ache in my legs. Behind me, something moved fast, a shape that displaced the water with its own gravity. I didn't look back. I couldn't. When I breached, the world exploded into noise, waves slapping steel, gulls screaming. I ripped off my mask, gasping air that felt too thin. The barge loomed ahead, dark against the dawn. "Topside, I'm up!" "Pull me in!" I shouted, voice cracking. But no one answered. The deck was empty. No figures, no movement. Only the slow creak of metal and the steady drone of the generator running on its own. I hauled myself up the ladder, boots clanging against the rungs. Mara's headset lay on the deck near the rail, coiled cord still wet. Val's laptop was open, showing sonar feed that looked like static snow. Jansen's clipboard rested beside a spilled mug, coffee gone cold. Everything looked paused, as if they'd simply stepped away. Then the sound came again, the hum, deep and resonant, rising through the deck plates. I turned toward the dive cage. It hung half-submerged, dripping. The surface around it rippled outward in slow, measured pulses. Something was surfacing beneath it. The water bulged, then split. A black mass rose into view, not metal, not water, not water, a fusion of both. Human shapes pressed against it, half-formed, half-melted, their mouths opening and closing in silent rhythm. At its center, a faint blue light pulsed like a heartbeat. Mara's voice crackled suddenly in my headset, faint, warped by static. "Eli, help us." I froze. The figures within the mass turned toward the sound of her voice, and the light inside brightened, not blue anymore, but the sickly white of arc lamps. It flared, and the air filled with a low, vibrating tone that shook the fillings in my teeth. The mass began to unfold. Tendrils of viscous matter reached for the barge, slapping onto steel and holding fast. The deck groaned under the pull. I stumbled back, searching for anything, a knife, a flare, a prayer. My hand closed around the emergency detonator for the decompression tanks. I didn't think. I just pulled the pin. The explosion ripped through the surface, not fire, but pressure and air and noise. The deck lifted beneath me. The world turned white. When I woke, I was floating among debris. The barge was gone. The sea was calm again, perfectly still. My suit's recorder light blinked weakly red. I pressed the button. "This is Eli Grant," I rasped. "If anyone finds this, stay away from the Caliban. It isn't a wreck. It's growing. It breathes. And it remembers names." Something shifted beneath me, a low, distant pulse. The water around my legs turned warm. Then a voice, soft, almost tender, whispered through the open comm. "Welcome back, Eli." The recorder light died. Recovered fragment of final dive log. Transmitted automatically via emergency buoy at 4:13 local time. Signal terminated abruptly. Source depth 398 feet. If you've made it this far into the dark, thank you for diving with us. What do you think the Caliban really carried down there? Was it a weapon? Or something older than war itself? Drop your theories in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed tonight's descent into the deep, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next story. Every click helps this channel grow, and every share keeps the campfire burning. Until next time, stay curious, stay afraid, and don't look too long into the dark, because sometimes it looks back.